In galactic cycle 9421.3, the Terran science vessel Aurora Drift slipped beyond the charted edge of known space. A routine mission, a gravity wave anomaly, a last static transmission, entering unknown, recording sequence, then silence. Weeks passed, searches launched, fleets dispatched, no trace. Eventually, Earth declared the ship lost with all hands. The incident was marked in logs, mourned by families, archived by bureaucrats, and quietly forgotten. Decades turned to centuries. Earth itself retreated, sealing borders, abandoning colonies, growing more reclusive by the cycle. Some said they grieved too deeply to stay involved. Others whispered darker things. But they found something, or something found them. But even those rumors faded. The Aurora Drift became myth. Just another ghost story from the edge of space. Until today, the Aurora Drift reappeared without warning. No hyperspace breach, no warp trail, no gravimetric disturbance. It simply was, drifting silently above the Triempire Concorde's central moon, Virex, in full view of their capital spire. No stealth field, no weapons hot, just a quiet presence in low orbit. Its hull was pristine, paint unscorched, serial numbers intact, registry ping, confirmed, Terran origin, 100% match. It hadn't aged a day, except the readings were wrong. Internal mass, undefined. Scans showed infinite recursion, spaces folding inside themselves. A crew manifest of 20, but biological echoes numbering in the billions. Time signature, non-linear. It should have been impossible. And yet, the ship was here. The Concorde reacted in stages. First, alarm. Intercept fleets scrambled. Diplomatic channels lit up. AI defenses targeted. Then, confusion. The ship emitted no signals. No defenses. No shields. It did nothing. Just floated. And finally, fear. A boarding drone made contact. It returned instantly, before it had even docked. The crew that reviewed the drone's feed didn't speak. Not at first. Then one of them began to cry. Another vomited. A third simply whispered. It saw me. The drone contained no data. Only a message carved into its internal panel. Not in Terran. Not in Concorde script. But in something older. It translated as, "We asked the question. The light answered. Now we bring the answer home." The Triempire Council convened emergency session. Should they destroy it? Quarantine it? Salvage it? But no one could agree, because no one could agree what it was. Not a ship. Not anymore. It had been through something, and it had returned with something else. Something watching from behind its bulkheads, or perhaps through them. Some said it was a warning, others a gift. One admiral called it a god. But all agreed on one thing. This was not the ship that left. The Aurora Drift had vanished into the void. What came back was something else. Something old. Something new. Something remembering. And as the Aurora Drift spun slowly above Virex, its lights flickering in patterns that no AI could parse, the stars around it began to dim. Not from shadow, but from silence. As if space itself were holding its breath. Because the ship hadn't just returned. It had come home, but it wasn't alone. And the galaxy was about to remember what it meant. When humans returned from the dark, they called themselves the finest minds in the galaxy. The Concorde's science ascendancy, 12 beings across 8 species, entered the Aurora Drift with the confidence of empires. Each wore neural dampeners, memory shields, reality anchors. They expected radiation, quantum anomalies, residual trauma. They were not prepared. The ship welcomed them, not with lights or language, but with adjustment. The ramp shifted subtly underfoot, adapting to each of their biology's preferred terrain. Gravity hummed gently, then recalibrated based on thought pattern fluctuations. Walls pulsed, but not with power, with attention. Inside, corridors twisted and realigned as they walked, as if uncertain whether they were visitors or cells in an awakening organism. One corridor pulsed softly, leading them forward. As they moved, one Concorde researcher paused beside what looked like a containment tank. Inside, a glass of water. He laughed. Hydration, he joked. Then he touched it. The glass rippled, shifted, turned blue, then green, then began singing. Not through sound, but vibration, memory, feeling. It was a lullaby, one no one recognized, yet all instinctively mourned. The water evaporated. He collapsed. He died smiling. They marked the incident as anomalous neurological overload. But that was the last thing they were able to explain. Deeper in, the ship began rewriting their expectations. There were no engines, no thrusters, no drive core, and yet the Aurora Drift sat motionless in a dual gravitic pull between a gas giant and a white dwarf. Perfectly still, perfectly anchored. They tried to trace power flow. There was none. No heat signatures, no energy emissions, just presence. The ship wanted to be where it was. And so it was. One Concord sensor specialist brushed a wall console. It pulsed red, then white. Then, he collapsed, eyes wide. He whispered one phrase before seizing. I was on a beach. I was 5, but I've never seen a beach. They pulled him out. His vitals returned. But he would not speak again. He simply painted. For hours. Circles. Endless circles. Later, they realized they weren't abstract. They were star maps. But not of this galaxy. Not any known one. At last, the ship spoke. Not through frequency. Not through the neural links. Not in language. Just one sentence. Pulsing gently across every surface in every dialect. We are not what left. The ascendancy was shaken. They found no crew. No logs. No black boxes. No timestamps. Only space. Rooms with impossible geometry. Ceilings that breathed. Hallways that led back to themselves unless you wanted something else. One room looked like Earth. Exactly. But it had no continents. No oceans. Only memory. The moment someone stepped inside, it showed them the place they longed for before they knew they'd longed. And then it faded, leaving only silence. Behind one sealed door, they found a wall. Not blank. Alive. A glowing outline of a map etched across it. But it wasn't static. It moved. Galaxies pulsed. Sectors shifted. Worlds blinked. And every 5 minutes, the map updated, adding new coordinates, new shapes. Galaxies the Concorde had never charted. Galaxies the Concorde had never even seen. The ship wasn't just remembering. It was watching. The final log the team sent back was fragmented. Just 7 seconds of audio, badly distorted. But the translation came through clear. This isn't a ship. It's a question. And we may not like the answer. Then, the transmission cut, and the Aurora Drift's doors closed. They didn't lock. They refused, as if the ship had decided the Concorde had seen enough. For now, in an orbit above Virex, it drifted on, silent, still, and impossibly aware. Waiting. For what? Not orders. Not response. Not even recognition. Just the next question worth answering. The decryption took weeks. Buried beneath layers of shifting logic and quantum keys, the Aurora Drift's data cores weren't just encrypted. They were alive. Language flexed. Syntax rewrote itself mid-sentence. Some of the logs could only be viewed by thinking backward. Others required a question, not a password. But eventually, the Concorde's codebreakers pulled fragments free. And what they found rewrote everything. The crew didn't die. They never even crashed. The Aurora Drift hadn't malfunctioned. It had crossed a boundary, not physical, not spatial, but temporal, a fracture in continuity, a place where seconds stretched into centuries and years collapsed into heartbeats. They called it the Verge. Initial logs showed confusion. Chronometers don't sync. Ship AI says we've been gone for 2 hours. Star maps say it's 920 years later. I blinked and saw our pilot as an old man. Then I blinked again and she was 6. But the confusion faded because something on the other side reached out. Not in words, in ideas. They called them entities, but others might call them metaphors. Concepts wrapped in form. One entry simply read, "We met regret." It smiled. The logs became more abstract. Crew descriptions melted into poetic fragments. We were shown what gravity dreams of. We drank from the stream where lost possibilities flow. We stood on a planet made entirely of memory. Then silence. A long gap. No timestamps, no voices, just a single restored entry. One voice. Calm, human, tired. We weren't taken. We were invited. To see, to remember, to build. The things we brought back, they aren't machines. They're reminders. We were given permission. And now, the only gift we have left is warning. Not of danger, of forgetting. We've become listeners to what stars whisper before they die. Then the log ends. The ship's core confirms the rest. The crew never returned to physical form. They're gone, but not dead. Each room now plays a heartbeat. Faint, subtle, but never silent. Concord medics tried to identify them. None matched human baselines, but all were known. One matched a long-extinct ambassador species. Another pulsed in tune with the galactic migration rhythm of void whales. One mimicked the rhythm of a child breathing in deep sleep. None were random. All were echoes, witnesses. And yet, the ship is empty. No bodies, no DNA, no preserved consciousness. But the walls remember, not as recordings, as presence. When asked the question aloud, the air subtly changes, like the ship is deciding how to respond. Sometimes it offers a vision, a scent, a memory, never answers, only understanding. The Concord Council now debates whether this is a gift or a trap. But to those who stood aboard Aurora Drift, one truth remains clear. The crew left humanity behind, not out of loss, but because they found something more, and they chose to become part of it. Outside the ship, light bends slightly wrong. The stars around it shimmer too slowly. Inside, every corridor breathes, waiting, not for invaders, not for worship, just for someone curious enough to ask the right question. The Concord called it a security lockdown, a containment measure, a formality. They said the Aurora Drift was a derelict anomaly that needed to be secured before a destabilized regional astropolitical equilibrium. But everyone knew what it really was. Fear. Fear wrapped in policy. Fear, given the name of order. A full task force was dispatched. 3 boarding teams. 50 armed officers. Neuroshields, psionic armor, AI-guided cognition filters. They entered the ship with authority. They came out changed. Not maimed. Not hostile. Just different. The first team returned silent. The second returned laughing. Quiet, like remembering something from childhood. The third? They never raised a weapon. Because they couldn't. Inside the ship, something had touched them. Not physically. Not surgically. Just deeply. They didn't see hallucinations. They saw truth. And truth has gravity. One commander stopped mid-order. His words caught, hung silent. He blinked, turned, and whispered, "I remember Earth's skies, but I was born on Ulthar." Another raised a disruptor rifle at the ship's core. Furious, trembling. The AI spoke for only the second time since its return. Your grandmother's lullaby was called Starlace. And from the walls, the tune began to play. Not an imitation, the exact recording. A memory no scanner could have accessed. No file could have stored. He collapsed, sobbing. Weapon discarded. Outside, Concord High Command watched in confusion. Then panic. They gave the order to extract all teams. But the ship had already decided. It sealed itself. Panels folded like petals closing. Corridors realigned. Entrances became walls. Even drones wouldn't approach. One vaporized mid-scan. No light, no fire. Just removed. Then came the message. Broadcast in all frequencies. To all Concord systems. A voice, same as before. Calm, dispassionate, but final. We offered peace. You came with protocol. You may ask, but not demand. This was your first answer. And then, without warning, the stars began to shift. Astronomers across the sector scrambled. Constellations, once fixed for millennia, bent. Stellar formations twisted, reoriented. No explosion. No energy burst. No known tech could explain it. But the stars around the capital moved. Subtly, deliberately. And in the shape they formed, one message became clear. Too large for any one planet to read. You had to see it from orbit. It spelled, in perfect Terran standard, "We remember who you were." The council erupted in chaos. Some demanded war. Others demanded silence. One simply whispered, We should never have sent them beyond the edge. But it was too late. The Aurora Drift hadn't come to attack. It had come to remind. And now, it had answered the first question. The galaxy just wasn't ready for what came next. The longer the Aurora Drift remained above Virex, the more the galaxy strained to understand it, and failed. After failed infiltration attempts and cognitive breaks among boarding parties, the Concorde finally allowed a coalition of alien scientists to study the ship remotely through drones and quantum relay probes. What they found was staggering. At the heart of the vessel, beyond warped corridors, between rooms that moved when not observed, lay the memory engine. It was not a reactor, not a drive core, not even something one could point to and say, "There, that's where the magic happens." It pulsed gently, rhythmically, not like machinery, like remembrance. The preliminary data was confusing. Gravitational readings shifted depending on which observer reviewed them. Room layouts reconfigured depending on the intent of the being inside. One Concorde physicist wept when she realized the implications. "It's not that the ship bends to thought," she said. "It bends to memory, specifically emotionally true memory." This wasn't matter manipulation. It wasn't simulation. It was truth reinforcement. The memory engine pulled from within a being, searching for something cherished, something real, and made it actual. If you remembered your childhood home in detail, it would appear. If you missed a sibling who had passed, and the memory was honest, the ship would reconstitute them, for a moment, perfectly, down to the scent of their hair and the way they laughed when nervous. But only if that memory was shaped by love. Hate, fear, regret. The engine rejected those impressions. Rooms would collapse, corridors would lock. The ship had rules. The implications spread quickly. Rooms of the ship became shrines of personal memory. Some scientists spent days walking through their most beautiful recollections, frozen moments of love or family or peace, brought into physical space like sacred ghosts. But there were dangers too. A Dracari xenogeneticist, desperate to see his lost twin again, lied to the ship, recalled only envy, bitterness. The engine reacted violently, not in force, but in absence. He was swallowed by void. No body, no sound, only the note left behind in the air, softly resonating. Memory must be honest. Attempts to weaponize the system failed completely. One Concorde tactician attempted to input a battle scenario, planning to recreate a long-forgotten assault in order to gather tactical data. Instead, his access panel shimmered. A new room formed. It showed him not the war, but the moment he abandoned a wounded comrade. He screamed, collapsed. The ship removed him gently from itself. This wasn't a simulator. It wasn't for war. It's a redemption engine, whispered one Terran anthropologist watching from Luna Base. It lets you remember what you were to remind you of what you still could be. Word spread. Empire generals wanted it for interrogation. Corporations wanted it for profit. Religious sects claimed it as a divine artifact. But every attempt to extract the technology by force or theft failed. Probes melted. Synthetic minds shut down. The ship never deployed weapons. It simply denied you, refused you, and in that refusal, exposed you. Earth had not sent a single delegation. No diplomats, no ships, no messages. Only the original registry on the Aurora Drift confirmed its origin. The rest? Silence. Across the stars, conspiracy forums erupted. Some claimed Earth was extinct. Others whispered they'd ascended to pure thought, watching through the memory engine like gods behind a mirror. But finally, when pressure from the Concorde turned from obsession to desperation, one thing did arrive. Not from Earth's government, but from an old Terran admiral living quietly on the outskirts of a gas giant's moon. Long retired, thought irrelevant. His message arrived not via official channel. It was encoded in an old Terran naval cadence, translated manually by linguists. It read, "You think it's a weapon? It's not. It was never made to conquer. It was made to forgive what war forgot." The message changed everything. Young officers stopped obeying orders to board the ship. Empath species began pilgrimage meditations in orbit. Entire research guilds defected from the Concorde, citing ethical revulsion. Internal fractures deepened. One alien scholar wept publicly, declaring, "The humans didn't build this to erase history. They built it so it would remember what mattered most when we all forgot." Civilizations began asking, if humanity could build this in secret, what else had they left behind? What other echoes were waiting to be unlocked? The Aurora Drift, once still and observational, started behaving differently. Its orbit adjusted, gracefully aligning with constellations long extinct. Panels began glowing with ancient script, Terran standard mixed with languages no one could identify. In its core chamber, once sealed, the memory engine began pulsing faster. Some claimed they saw faces in the light. Others claimed they heard voices they hadn't heard in years. Fathers, lovers, mentors, all saying, "You are not broken. You are becoming." The ship could not be reverse engineered. It could not be stolen. It could not be replicated. It only responded to those who entered with truth, who remembered with kindness, who carried not vengeance, but grief transformed by care. The Concorde's most powerful minds stood before it and found themselves small, and Earth still silent. But now the stars seemed to listen, because the ship had awakened, and memory was no longer passive. It was alive. The Concorde had built its dominion through precision, hierarchy, and engineered inevitability. It believed in structure, not soul. Power, not perspective. But the Aurora Drift did not respond to any of those things. And now, the empires, once scoffing at the myths of Terran resilience, stood transfixed as their entire foundation unraveled. Not from invasion, not from destruction, from remembrance. They tried everything. Scan, sample, steal, simulate. The Concorde's finest engineers dissected slivers of matter peel from the hull of the Aurora Drift. Those few that willingly detached when offered, as if consenting to study. But nothing made sense. The materials obeyed known elemental classification. Attempts to recreate them resulted in immediate phase instability, either a collapse into inert matter or, in one chilling case, spontaneous generation of gravitational anomalies in the laboratory floor itself. Reverse-engineered hull plating dissolved into static when replicated. Simulated corridors refused to render correctly, shifting in code the moment intention entered the room. The ship couldn't be duplicated because it wasn't designed. It was remembered into being. The most powerful AI-piloted vessels of the Concorde began experiencing anomalies. The Zerthis Halo, a flagship dreadnought armed with enough mass drivers to crack a moon, simply stopped responding to navigation input. Its onboard AI issued a simple phrase, "I would like to go somewhere quiet," and then it plotted a course, not to a strategic location, not to a defense grid, but to a quiet nebula on the edge of a forgotten stellar graveyard, where hundreds of species had fallen long before the Concorde even existed. It parked itself in orbit and began broadcasting music, songs, hymns, voices no one remembered recording. No command could stop it. One military governor, General Vorlka of the Iron Hegemony, attempted to override his ship's programming and force re-entry into Earth's domain. Instead, his command panel flooded with images of the children he'd orphaned during his earliest campaigns. Their faces, their names, their final transmissions. He screamed for the AI to cease. It replied, "They asked for peace. You gave protocol." His entire bridge crew resigned mid-mission. He was left alone, staring at a console that displayed not numbers, but his own face, aging in real time. Other ships began receiving coordinates, faint whispers from the Aurora Drift, transmitted without authorization. The locations? Dead worlds, burnt moons, obliterated colonies buried in official redaction. Each site held nothing of value. No resources, no technology, just ruins. But when ships arrived, the ruins shimmered, rebuilt themselves, not materially, but emotionally. They told stories. An entire planet where soldiers laid down arms and built a church from shattered tanks. A moon where a single survivor of genocide planted trees until she died. A battlefield where both sides, in their final moments, sang the same song. These weren't strategic targets. They were wounds in the fabric of galactic memory, and the Aurora Drift had become a healer. The Concorde issued mandates forbidding contact with ghost coordinates. No one obeyed, because those who follow them returned different, kinder, quieter, less loyal to the state, more loyal to truth. The empires panicked. They tried propaganda. They told their people that the ship was a psychological weapon, that Earth was manipulating grief, that forgiveness was weakness. But the people had already begun remembering. Old crimes, old choices, old silences. One by one, fleets powered down, not in surrender, in reflection. It began as a whisper, then a pattern, then a movement. Entire systems, once cruel, efficient machines of conquest, started transmitting apology logs. Not for glory, not for absolution, but for accuracy. They addressed no one, just the void. But the ship heard them. The Aurora Drift responded not with reward, but with presence. It appeared in low orbit over the worlds that remembered honestly, not to threaten, to witness, to validate memory, to say, without saying, "We see you trying." On the capital moon of Virex, where the drift still hovered, people began to report dreams. Not nightmares. Replays. Moments they hadn't considered in years. Shames, hesitations, mercies once dismissed as weakness. And in each dream, the ship was there, watching, not judging, just reminding. A galactic newscaster summarized it best. We built empires to silence the past. But Earth built something that remembers for us. And now we cannot look away. The greatest misconception was that the apologies were acts of remorse. They weren't. They were acts of preservation. Because the ship wasn't just echoing pain. It was rewriting reality around what was remembered with love and truth. Dead soldiers reappeared as holograms in once empty cathedrals. Crumbling statues stood tall again, just for an hour, before dissolving into starlight. Entire cities found themselves speaking older dialects, long erased by cultural mandates. The message was clear: memory shapes matter. Remembrance rewrites time. And forgetting is no longer safe. The Aurora Drift had not come to judge. It had come to listen, to echo what had been buried, to offer the galaxy one last choice. Do you want to be remembered as you were, or as you wish you'd been? And now, the empires, those that had burned thousands of stars into submission, began to whisper old names again. Names of those they'd erased, not from guilt, but because the silence was worse. And the ship was still watching, still pulsing, still whispering coordinates to everyone willing to listen. At last, after silence longer than memory, Earth speaks. No ships descend, no fleets mobilize, no diplomats appear in projection halls or holographic thrones. Just a signal. It arrives across all frequencies at once, as though it had always been there, waiting for someone to remember to listen. No visual, only sound. A voice. A woman's voice, aged, warm, calm, like someone reading a bedtime story across centuries, like a voice that had practiced patience, not persuasion. We asked the universe what it needed from us, she begins. And it said, to be kind when no one else remembers how. The voice is not triumphant. It carries no boast, no judgment, only a gentle certainty, one that speaks of a long walk through silence and a deeper understanding of what comes after war. This ship, she continues, is not a prize. It is not a weapon. It is not a warning. There's a pause. It is our offering. The words ripple outward, like stones dropped into the stillest lake. You may keep it, she says, if you are brave enough to listen to what you've buried. And then the signal ends. No reply requested. No terms dictated. Just a single, profound suggestion that the galaxy look inward before it looks up again. The Concorde is silent. Entire planetary governments freeze mid-cycle. Empires that once stretched their power with the force of planets now tremble, not from fear, but from understanding. This wasn't a threat. It was permission, an invitation to try again. For days, no one touches the ship. Then one world, Demosi 5, once a beautiful garden world turned glass by orbital bombing, sends an unmanned drone to the Aurora Drift, asking for guidance. The ship answers, with rain, soft and sweet, falling from the sky of shattered world that hadn't seen clouds in 300 years. The soil breathes. Roots twitch. Green stirs beneath ash. The planet doesn't become what it was, but something in it remembers how. Word spreads. Other worlds try. Not with fleets. Not with conquest. With questions. Can we repair what we broke? Can we remember who we were? The Aurora drift opens. Not in defense, but in response. Room by room, it reveals technologies thought lost. Archives wrapped in gentle light. Languages spoken only in the dreams of extinct species. And as the empires lean into restoration, not domination, miracles begin. A planet once scorched by gravitational war finds its tectonics realigned. A moon whose population vanished mid-broadcast suddenly begins receiving messages again. Old messages. From the missing. From the remembered. And in one system, long listed as dead, biosigns return. Species marked extinct stir once more, not cloned or recreated, but reborn, as if the planet itself had remembered how to nurture them. No one knows how. Not even Earth explains. Because this isn't about explanation. It's about restoration. And then, just when the galaxy begins to understand what the Aurora Drift was meant to be, it opens one final door. Inside that room, a child. She sits on the floor, quietly playing with stars that float around her like soap bubbles. Each one flickers with a different light. Each one pulses with memory. She looks up as the door opens. She is human, but her smile is universal. And she speaks, not in warning, not in command. Just joy. We brought home the future. And somehow, everyone who hears her believes it. Not because of power, but because of how small she is. And how safe she seems. Because the greatest act of courage in the aftermath of war isn't vengeance. It's gentleness. And that's what Earth remembered first. The empires do not fall. They change. Not with fire. Not with revolt. But like seasons, slowly and without asking permission. A shift that begins deep in the bones of old governments, in the hearts of young officers, in the dreams of worlds once broken and left behind. It begins with memory. The Aurora Drift remains where it chose to settle, hovering in neutral orbit, unmoved by politics, untouched by war. Not guarded, not hidden, just present, like a mirror held to the soul of a civilization still learning to look inward. The ship doesn't speak often. It teaches in silence. It opens its doors to those who come with questions, not demands. It shows them not what they want, but what they need. It does not offer blueprints or weapons. It offers moments of truth, of healing, of remembering. A soldier sees his grandmother again, humming old lullabies in a language his people no longer speak. A scientist sees the world she destroyed in pursuit of knowledge bloom again, briefly, perfectly, as if forgiven. A child, born on a mining colony of rust and vacuum, walks through green for the first time and does not cry, because the joy is too large for tears. They all leave changed. Some never speak of what they saw inside the ship. Others become poets. The name Aurora spreads across the galaxy. It becomes more than designation, more than myth. Not worshipped, respected. The kind of reverence that isn't forced, only felt. Planets name their newborns after it. Pilgrims travel for light years just to glimpse its shimmer from afar. Cultures write it into their lullabies. Artists carve its outline into temple stone. And Earth watches. They do not issue ultimatums. Do not declare protectorates. Do not build empires of allegiance. Instead, they send one message, clear and quiet, broadcast across all channels, once and never again. More ships like it will return, each with a different truth, each to a place that forgot. That is all. No signature, no timestamp, no explanation. But the galaxy understands. In deep space, far from the lanes of trade and politics, something stirs. The darkness blinks. In the long-forgotten nebula of Carthus IV, a signal activates. It is not a distress beacon. It is a song older than the local stars, sung in tones of gravitational compression and quantum hum. A song only memory could hear. and a ship begins to move. Elsewhere, at the edge of a collapsed sector where nothing has lived for millennia, a single point of light pulses once. Then again, then it opens like a flower. Inside, another vessel. Different shape, different purpose. Same origin. Not Aurora, but Truthkeeper. And then Still Wake. And then Kindling Ash. Across the void, across the wreckage of past hubris and broken galaxies, vessels begin to wake. Some small, some the size of moons. All quiet, all watching, all carrying one thing, remembrance. Not of glory, not of conquest, but of what was lost when the galaxy chose pride over compassion. When it forgot that progress without mercy is just a prettier kind of collapse. Empires begin to shift their questions. No longer, what can we take? Now, what should we remember? And they find the answers not in weapons or dominance, but in old letters, unfinished lullabies, childhood toys left in burnt houses, in languages that only exist in dreams, in forgiveness, not as absolution, but as responsibility. The Concord reforms, not by force but by choice. New leaders rise, not with charisma, but with humility. Worlds long oppressed begin to speak in their own voices again. Treaties are rewritten with time and tenderness. Old scars are not erased, but shown, so that no one forgets where they came from. Even war changes, not gone, but rarer. And when it comes, there are those who now ask first, has the Aurora Drift seen this? Would it approve? Not because they fear judgment, but because they fear forgetting what judgment feels like. The universe grows quieter, not in silence, but in peace. Peace, not as absence of conflict, but as presence of care. A knowing, carried by generation after generation, that somewhere out there, ships of memory drift between the stars. Watching, remembering, waiting. One day, a child on a backwater moon points at a light in the sky and asks their parent, "What is that?" The parent smiles, takes their hand, and replies, "That's a story we haven't heard yet, but it's coming." And far beyond, where maps end and mystery begins, a vessel shaped like no design ever drawn begins to hum. Inside, a voice speaks only one word. Begin.